Managing a small team or business comes with a unique set of challenges. With limited resources and manpower, it's easy for things to feel chaotic and out of your control. How can you, as a leader, accomplish your goals while keeping your team engaged, effective, and accountable? This podcast will give you practical strategies you can implement now to lead your team or business to reach its fullest potential. Welcome to the Organizing Chaos podcast with your host, Danny Coleman.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Danny Coleman here. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Organizing Chaos, where we find small practical strategies for small teams and small businesses. So today, I want to talk about just something I hear often, which from owners and managers, which is the belief that their employees are lying to them or are being less than honest with them. So I've experienced this a lot myself before. I think that it requires a perspective change, and that's what I want to talk about it. That's what I'm going to talk about today. So when someone tells me that they believe that their employee is lying to them or whatnot, I'll go ahead and say that it's certainly possible that that is the truth. It's possible that you hired somebody who's not, who's dishonest intentionally, and they cover the truth intentionally, or they are somewhat, they're the mischievous or whatever, and so they bend the truth and whatnot. And so I'm not going to rule out the fact that if you believe that an employee is lying to you, that indeed they may be. However, that said, I am an optimist, and I do believe in people. I believe that people are good. Most people are good. And what happens typically is really something that it's really miscommunication or somehow gets lost in translation. So an example might be you're teaching employee, we'll say Jane, where you're teaching Jane how to do payroll. And, so you've been doing payroll for a long time, and you're trying to teach Jane how to do it, and you walk her through, the process that you always use, and, as you're going through the whole process, you keep stopping and checking with her, saying, does that make sense? And when the whole thing's done, you're just like, cool, so do you feel like you get all that? And they say yes, and then they go and they do it, and they just completely blow it. They do it completely wrong, they do a terrible job, and they seemed to have been, the whole time you're showing them, they acted like they understood. They acted like they were getting it. Or maybe another example, right, where it's like you have a new idea, maybe for a new product or a new service to offer, or something extra that you want to start doing for customers. And so you say, I think that we should start doing X, Y, Z. What do you guys think that's a good idea? And then, people say, yeah, I think that's, great idea. And then it goes into effect, and then people are poorly implementing your new idea, and you're trying to get to the bottom of it. And then after a lot of pain and suffering, you get to the point where people are like, yeah, well, actually, we just we think the idea sucks, in reality. And so you ask yourself, well, why? Why didn't you guys tell me this sooner? Why didn't you tell me that you didn't like the idea sooner? And so it does seem in all these instances that your employees have lied to you. But what I have found to be the actual truth is that people feel uncomfortable, or they feel like they are not allowed to really express their opinion, or maybe their default is just to agree with you. And so they might have a little seed of doubt, or maybe they think, that idea does sound like it kind of sucks, but they're the boss, so I'm not going to say anything. Or they're the manager, so I'm not going to say anything. Or perhaps when you are like the example that I talked about earlier, where you're showing Jane the process of how to do payroll, and she keeps saying that she gets and understands what you're explaining to her, but then goes and blows it the next time you ask her to do it, and then she says, oh, well, I didn't really understand, or I didn't really understand. So it seems like she was lying. If that happens, then what's probably the case is in that, like for instance, that instance, Jane, when you're doing the payroll thing, She doesn't really understand, but she doesn't feel comfortable with saying, no, I don't understand. She's afraid of looking stupid or, unintelligent or something like that. So it is fair for you as the owner or as the manager to say, well, it's on them. If I ask them if they understand and they say yes, it's on them. And you're not wrong. You're not wrong in that. But what I like to do whenever I'm approaching communication with somebody, specifically an employee, is whenever I am trying to explain a concept, or maybe I'm saying, hey, I have this new idea. What do you guys think about it? I intentionally create space for them to disagree. So I want to talk about three different ways that you can give them opportunities or space to disagree with you, which is how you invite them to give you the truth. So the first thing is have regular meetings. I've talked about meetings a lot in the past. I'm a huge believer that small businesses, one of the biggest things that they're missing are having regular structured meetings. And when you have regular structured meetings, this is a time and place where you can create that space for people to disagree with you. And having those meetings creates trust, and it just essentially is like a compound effect. You have trust and space to disagree, and so they disagree with you, and you don't fire them, or you tell them good idea, or you guys debate it out, or whatever. And that just, as that happens regularly, when you do that every other week or whatever, you start to create a culture, and I'll talk more about this, you'll start to create a culture of honesty, or a culture of, hey, it's okay to disagree with the authority here because you don't have it all together. Nobody has it all together. So the best thing that you can ever do is to build a team that helps to complement you. You may have heard this story before, and I'm going to paraphrase it here real quick, but Henry Ford was once accused of, by a paper, of being ignorant, and he sued them for libel. And so what they did is, in court, they asked him all these kind of random factoid questions, many of which he did not know. And they're like, and the paper's like, see, yeah, he is ignorant. He didn't know all these things. And Henry Ford says to something to the effect, you know what? I can press a button anytime on my switchboard or intercom thing, whatever they had back then. And any man who works for me at my disposal will come in and answer that question for me. He has all these people at his disposal. Some of the, out of those, 100 people that he were in his office, or how many people were in his office, he knew that somebody would have one of the answers to any question that he really needed answered. So he didn't need to be a super genius or whatever. Instead, he just surrounded himself by a bunch of people who would give him the truth. And that's exactly what you have to do as a leader and as a manager or small business owner. You need to create an atmosphere where people feel comfortable giving you the truth. So that's a little bit of a tangent, but I'll come back to my second point, which is encourage them to disagree with you. So like I said, you kind of have to be intentional about creating that space for them to disagree. So let's say you're like, you know what, I have a new idea. I think that we should start creating this new service or this new product. And I feel that it's going to really, the customer is really going to appreciate that. They're really going to like that. What do you guys think? Do you think that's, do you guys see any holes in that? Or what do you think? What do you think might defeat that idea? Basically, that's what you want to do. You want to give them that space and encourage them to think critically about your idea, the thing that you're suggesting, and find ways to disagree with you. And then when they do, you guys are just going to have a better service or product afterwards. You don't have to always be right as the owner or as the the manager or whatever. Honestly, it's exhausting to try to feel like you've got to always be right. So the best thing you can ever do is to spread around the blame a little bit by inviting other people to actually disagree with you. And again, this has multiple different benefits for your business, because it also, when you get them to kind of come back with their ideas, their conflicting ideas, or their solutions that may be different from yours, or you get them to defeat one of your ideas or whatever, you have buy-in from them. Buy-in, B-U-Y-I-N. It's just so important to have buy-in from your employees, and you get that when you allow them to be involved in the decision-making process. So the third thing then is making sure that your culture is one where honesty is encouraged, and the disagreeing with authority is also encouraged, right? It seems maybe backwards in a traditional, or like the traditional thinking rather, seems to be that the leader needs to have all the answers. That the leader needs, like for instance, think about the president, or even so I'm involved in a race right now in the local county I live in. I'm not running for mayor, but I'm helping someone who is, and there's a list of questions that they'll need to ask that are like, what are all your answers for all these problems? Well, the reality of leadership is really not like that. As mayor or as president or some other place of authority, their job really is going to be to leverage what other people's ideas are and get feedback from the community or from, their constituents or from, the people who are working for them or working under them or whatever. But for some reason, in a lot of ways in our culture, we keep perpetuating the idea that leaders need to have all the answers, leaders need to have all the solutions. But in reality, leaders really need to just be good at getting solutions and answers from other people. Because if you can, as a leader, what your job is to do is to create a hive mind, if you will. Hive mind, H-I-V-E, mind. kind of like with bees, right? They can all communicate in a certain way or whatever. And I'm sure you've hopefully you've seen some good sci-fi movies where there's some type of aliens and they're all like these mindless creatures, but there's some type of hive mind that controls them all. But anyways, I digress. That's what your job as a leader is supposed to be. So your culture and your business needs to be one that says, guys, I encourage you to disagree with me. I am the leader, but that does not mean that I'm always right. I want your ideas. I want you to poke holes in the things that I'm trying to do, so that way together we create a more thorough, well thought out, multiple perspective giving product or service or whatever. So and then just kind of a part of that is always admitting fault. Admitting fault when you're wrong. That's a big part of this too. So just to recap on those three things, first of all, make sure you have your regular meetings. Secondly, encourage them to disagree with you. And third, make sure that your culture is one that encourages and promotes honesty by saying it's okay to disagree with the authority. And authority, like you and whoever else is in a place of authority in your business, need to be admitting fault openly and readily. Never think that by admitting fault, you somehow admit weakness or whatever. That's not the case. In fact, humility is where people are going to have more respect for you. They're going to feel more open with you. And again, they're going to be honest with you. So hopefully you are not dealing with maniacal employees who are actually lying to you. Hopefully what the real case is, if you're dealing with this issue, is that there's really just a miscommunication or there's a communication breakdown. And hopefully these three steps are going to help you be able to kind of bridge that communication gap and give people that space, help create that space, help create that culture for your employees to be more honest with you so you can have an awesome, rock solid team. So anyways, hope you guys are doing well. Please like, share, subscribe on all this stuff. Reviews really help me on my podcast, on my iTunes page or Stitcher. You can also check me out on Spotify. And if you ever have any topic ideas or are interested in being interviewed on the podcast, you can shoot me an email, danny@dannycoleman.me. Danny@dannycoleman or danny@dannycoleman.me, and then my website is just that domain. It's www.dannycoleman.me. Check me out there. So hope you guys are doing well, and I will catch you later.
Want more? Go to dannycoleman.me to download Danny's free small business hiring guide, which includes tips, templates, and tools, plus a step-by-step process you can use to find and keep high-quality employees for your small team or business.